The following is an America Matters media production. The views expressed do not necessarily represent those of the station or its advertisers, although we think they should. But that's the opinion of America Matters Media.
This is not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you.
You're welcome to Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. I'm here with my co-host, Leland Faegre.
Beautiful drive-in.
Beautiful drive, beautiful day.
Late spring, and the Spooner Lake is no longer frozen.
Okay.
Very, very nice. Yeah.
And the security guard here at the radio station was not wearing a mask
That's
today.
right. Neither were we.
Neither are we, yep. But, of course, the Democrats are freaking out, and some of them I think we can call the masturbators.
Is that your own?
Yeah. they are, upset and don't know what to do. They're rudderless. Without these masks, everything in their worldview is falling apart.
Yeah, well, that's right. And they really don't have anything. So it's not just that they think they don't. They literally don't.
So Rachel Maddow wants us to feel compassion for her because she's struggling to wrap her mind around the new CDC guidelines. And she says,
so pathetic.
Yeah.
God. Can't believe she did
She
that.
has to train herself to think that someone without a mask is not a deplorable conservative Trumper.
Yeah, she has to retrain her mind.
Right. And David Hogue, you know him, the Parkland shooting.
The kid.
Yeah, the kid. He's still wearing a mask outdoors even.
Because he doesn't want to be associated with the Republican Party. So he really does reveal the power of that mask.
Yes.
How they've been exploiting it,
Yes.
Or they think they have,
Mm-hmm. It's just a symbol of authority and compliance.
I don't really know how
is.
effective it is.
Nobody really knows. There are conflicting studies.
Well, I don't mean on the science. I mean on the political
I mean
aspect
on the
of it.
science. I mean, there are different conflicting views from scientists that we've gotten over the last couple of years, whether their masks are effective or not.
That's right.
Of course, the Asian people are used to wearing masks, so they want us to become like Asia, I guess.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, that was, in the context of history, the purpose of the New World Order was to lift other nations up while holding us back, a managed decline. And Barack Obama even said so. I don't have the verbiage in front of me, but that's what he was managing our decline so that we
You're
would
a lying
not...
dog-faced pony soldier.
Yeah, see, that's how he would... See.
Well, it's all about redistribution of wealth. But not from the elites themselves, probably,
They escape all that.
Yeah, mainly from the upper middle class and the middle class. At any rate, this is somewhat of a symbolic defeat for the status, and we should be thankful.
We are thankful.
We are thankful, yes. And I'm
going to go home tonight and have another glass of wine just to celebrate.
Well, you have your wine, I'll have my... I'll have a toke or two. The Supreme Court ruled that 9-0, and that's the good thing, that the police must have a warrant to enter a house and confiscate your guns. Mm-hmm. So this is a shot across the bow to red flag laws, maybe.
And that didn't take long.
No, it didn't take long.
Because that case was just presented to them last week, was it?
Yeah.
They got better things to do. I think that's what the message they're sending is, that they have more important things to decide.
Yeah. Yep. A man's home is his castle.
Yep.
And you have to be able to. I think Clarence Thomas wrote the decision. I think he even said that you have a right for refuge in your castle or something.
Words to that effect.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
So we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week, but it was very interesting on May 7th when Lavrov and Blinken squared off at the UN Security Council. China is in charge of the Security Council for the month, and they brought up the meeting, and it was just like we've been saying here on Talking Truth to Power, but you don't see a lot of political pundits saying, is that the difference between international law and the rules-based international order that the U.S. is pushing, and the Five Eyes. So the bottom line is Lavrov said that Russia and their allies believes in international law, and the Americans, Blinken, said, oh, no, we believe in humanitarian international law that takes precedence over state sovereignty. International law, by the way, even though you may not like the UN and they do things that we must prevent them from having a world tax and all that stuff, but even so, state, according to the UN Charter, state sovereignty is primary. Each nation should respect other nations and not interfere in their internal affairs. So
yeah, but none of those parties believe in that.
None of
Lavrov doesn't believe it.
Oh yeah, he does.
Blinken doesn't believe it.
Yeah, he does.
No, they don't believe in sovereignty.
What do you mean? How does
In the grander sense, both sides state their case for sovereignty, but it's disingenuous.
Why is it disingenuous for Lavrov?
Well, because he's a partner to this grand design of the New World Order, just like China and other member states.
Oh, I have to disagree with you.
Oh, yeah. No, see, this is where I was brought up on this understanding.
Yeah.
And
but I think it's fundamentally wrong.
Well, no, I don't. I think
Nope.
The realization here is, and we won't come to that conclusion until we get closer to where they actually pull it off. But the purpose of the United Nations was not about general discussion. It was about the purpose was designed to allow them to take control of the sovereignty of member states.
Well, that's not in the charter.
No, it's not in the charter.
No.
That's why we have to look beyond all of that in order to understand
And
the purpose.
I don't see it applying to Russia and even China.
And we won't until it actually happens.
Yeah, all
But
right.
that's the purpose.
Whatever, I'll do what I want.
Okay, but
And remember who donated the property where the United Nations sits.
America?
The Rockefellers.
Oh, the Rockefellers. Yeah, okay. So, but right now, whatever you may think about the future, right now, Russia and China and Iran and the other allied states are standing up for state sovereignty and against this idea that the United States can determine what the rules are and enforce the rules unilaterally.
My point is that we should just look very, very suspiciously on anyone who claims sovereignty at this point in history, because those powers do not believe it.
You hear it all the time. Buy local, think local, eat local, choose local, grow local. But who the heck really is local? You can shop with locals at the Nevada Marketplace in the Reno Town Mall and search for locals at buynevadafirst.com. We're all local all the time.
Hi, this is Eddie Floyd. Let me tell you about my favorite non-profit public charity, Wainema Wild Horse Sanctuary, located on the Forsythe Ranch in Hallelujah Junction area. And please go to www.wainemaranch.com. That's WYNEMA ranch.com.
Mustang Sally now, baby. This overload.
Shannon Lawson here. Join us for the Nevada Radio Roundup, Fridays at 2 p.m. A good news variety show all about the local scene. The Nevada Roundup, Friday at 2.
To join the conversation, call 844-790-TALK. That's 844-790-8255. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back. It's Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor. I'm here with Leland Faegre. And in the international news, to keep it there, last Friday, Blinken arrived in Kiev with his newly confirmed deputy, Victoria Cookies Nuland.
Yeah, I love cookies.
And they told President Zelensky he had to pay for his embarrassing and poorly thought out escalation of the Donbass separatists. But, the appearance would be just three Jews having a friendly weekend together. But then the hammer dropped. In short, Ukraine is now being reduced to a Zog colony. The major industries will be run by those approved by Victoria. And then she's also famous for saying, "Yat's our guy," or maybe "Goy." Yat's our goy.
Oh, that's very good. Very good.
Leland.
Yeah.
So Ukraine will be sucked dry like Russia was in the 1990s. And
So it no longer has even any hope, is what
Right.
you're saying, right?
they have put themselves in the lion's den. They
Yeah.
walked into the trap.
Right.
And by the way, they also want all of Rudy Giuliani's sources in the Hunter Biden investigation to be rounded
Yeah,
up.
Giuliani's a criminal. He's a terrorist.
Yeah.
That's what they were trying to, effectively reverse everything Trump did.
Yeah.
Literally everything.
So, but there is some nuance happening here. For example, Biden said his security services tell him the Colonial Pipeline hackers are Russian, but he said there's no evidence that Putin was behind it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually kind of a nuanced reply.
It is. And I wonder if it was deliberate or an accident on his part.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, these Russian hackers almost always turn out to be Ukrainian or someplace else in the Eastern Europe, not even in Russia, and so
I think he got a call from Brennan that afternoon.
So and
Joe,
then,
get your act together.
and then we just found out that Biden has decided to finally waive the sanctions on Nord Stream 2.
Yeah.
Is this the end of the soap opera?
I mean, we've been saying it was about finished now for about 6 months.
I know.
So
Now I heard that it might not be finished till September. I don't know what's going on. NATO had ships and submarines within the perimeter of the construction area for a while. Maybe that stopped the construction. But now apparently they got the green light. And
they were taking a look at things.
if Trump had done that, all hell would have broken
Oh yeah,
loose.
sure, absolutely.
But nobody said much of anything about Biden doing it. So the conservatives, on Fox are all confused now. They've been listening to the Democrats say Putin was behind everything, and now all of a sudden Putin was not behind the hack. And but of course they have to say nothing happens in Russia unless Putin knows about it.
That's a common narrative. Yeah.
Yeah.
They almost, to a person, say that actually.
I know. Yeah. It's one of their talking points. Yep. And then, we have other things going on now about a lot of talk about China. Marco Rubio said on television he has absolute proof that China is imprisoning and torturing the Uyghurs, just like Adam Schiff had absolute proof that Trump was colluding with Putin.
I wonder why he doesn't present it if he's got it.
I know. And then Nikki Haley, in the same sentence, said that the Israelis had the absolute right to defend themselves against the so-called terrorist Muslims in Gaza, but the Chinese had no right to defend themselves against the Uyghurs, some of whom are actually terrorists. Again, the media doesn't talk about it, but the East Turkestan Islamic movement is the one that infiltrated some of the Uyghur mosques and caused acts of terrorism, which the Chinese reacted to. But, and then, everybody's confused. Circle back Jan Penske is confused. She was asked to her face if the Palestinians...
circle back Jan Penske?
Yeah. She was asked to her face if the Palestinians had the right to defend themselves, and she hemmed and hawed. But the media is starting to push back a little bit, and, I think some politicians are admitting that Israel just simply does not have the moral high ground anymore, but neither do we. That's the thing. Well, how can we set up a rules-based order when the world is seeing us as not having the moral high ground to do so?
That's the point.
We choose truth over facts.
Recently, the BBC, a journalist, had a sit-down interview with the president of Azerbaijan, who recently, if you remember, attacked Armenia. And she was berating him for the lack of a free press in Azerbaijan. And he exploded on her. And he said, how can you accuse me of not having a free press when you're torturing Julian Assange?
Bingo.
Right, exactly.
That was just a direct hit.
Yep.
I wish I could have seen that, actually.
Yeah. And then at first only Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib were upfront about their support of the Palestinians, but then Bernie Sanders spoke out forcibly on Sunday, and some other Democrats started to speak out. You know, even George W. Bush condemned the bombing of apartment buildings. The U.S. has fallen.
What do you mean, even George W. Bush?
Because, I mean, he invaded Iraq, but Ari Fleischer, his Zionist press secretary, issued the statement saying that, and he said that there's no evidence that the people in Gaza were human shields for Hamas, and so on. And but now, you know, they blow up the building that housed the AP and Al Jazeera TV. They gave them a few minutes warning. All their cameras and equipment were destroyed in the building, and Israel keeps saying that Hamas was using it. But you know, they have no proof. They presented no proof. But even if Hamas was using, Hamas is the government of Gaza. They're going to have some offices somewhere.
I think it's reasonable to assume they were operating out of there. It was their protection. But going back to W. Bush, I mean, this is a crowd that's trying to figure out a way to the White House in 2024.
Say what?
Yeah.
I mean, the American people don't realize that they're formulating a grand design, electoral design here. And some of these things that we hear coming out of their spokesmen, like Karl Rove, and who's the former press secretary whose name escapes me for the moment?
Ari Fleischer.
Yeah, Fleischer.
Yeah.
You know, all these people, they're speaking for Bush now. So don't be surprised what you hear out of them.
Scientifically possible!
Jeb Bush, you mean?
For Jeb.
Yeah, for Jeb Bush.
On behalf of Jeb,
Yeah, I'm sure he wants to try to run again.
I mean, it doesn't have to be Jeb. It could be Lynn Cheney. But it's going to be somebody from that crowd.
Right.
That globalist Republican side.
Right. Oh, yeah. They're not going to go away that quietly, but we have them down a little bit, but not out.
They're just not sure how to do it. I think they're just getting their feet wet here. But they're going to be out there. We're going to be hearing from them.
Did you know that Ireland is Europe's greatest supporter of the Palestinians?
Oh, do I ever?
Yeah,
I live there. I know exactly how they think over there.
Even the soccer fans, even the Irish punters, they call them, the soccer rowdies, they would show up with Palestinian flags and demonstrate.
It's not just Palestine. I mean, effectively, it's a Marxist arrangement in Ireland. Obfuscation is their favorite tool, but that's what they speak for. You know, it's a very, very cleverly portrayed and resilient constituency that never quite gets the attention it deserves, never gets the investigation it deserves. When you have to live among them to really understand. There's a latent anti-Americanism there.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know that. The ugly American.
Oh my God, yeah. It's real. I felt it.
Yeah.
And then I read about it in one of the establishment newspapers there.
Shut up.
And no one else seems to get that over there because it's just automatic. It's natural for them. But they won't. I don't think they really fully comprehend the characteristics of it.
In what sense?
They're not conscious of it. It's there, but they don't really. If you were to confront them about it, they would say, "Oh, we don't feel that way." But if you point, this and that and the other out, they would have.
Well,
to
I know there's Irish members of Parliament that have confronted the Israelis. Claire Daly is a real firebrand. She's in the European Parliament now.
Yeah, well, look at the provincial.
And they are on the left.
Look at the IRA.
There's no doubt.
The IRA is Marxist.
Yes.
So,
Sinn Féin.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it just goes below. They see parallels between what's happening to the Palestinians and what the British did.
Yeah, I think that is the connection.
Yeah. They see Israel as simply a European settler movement, and the same thing the British did to them by importing all the Protestants into Northern Ireland. They see similarities with the Jews being brought into Palestine.
That's where the damage was. That's where it started.
Yep. it's quite interesting, but Joe Biden is another reason why he's a disgrace to the Irish
and to everybody else. By the way, I just see here that Congressman Mary Miller, she is from where is she? I think she's from Illinois. I can't remember where but she's part of the Freedom Caucus. She says that Nancy Pelosi has not been forthright with information about what happened on January 6th. We need to investigate her.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They want this 9/11 commission.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Would you like more energy? A photon sound beam may be the solution you need. A photon sound beam uses electrical energy to ionize gases that generate ozone and light to enter your body directly through the skin.
This is America Matters Media on AM 1180 KCKQ,
a Lotus broadcast station.
The power of radio since 1967.
Want to expand your advertising dollar? Sponsor this or any America Matters program by calling 775-827-8900, extension 2. Now, back to the show.
Hey, welcome back. It's Talking Truth to Power. I'm your host, Brendan Trainor, and I'm here with Leland Faegre.
And Shanimal Lawson.
And Shanimal, yeah.
He made a good point in the commercial break that, when Gingrich was Speaker of the House, he talked about cuts. He couldn't even get rid of the National Endowment for the Arts.
Oh, they can never get rid of it.
They can't get rid of the most trivial
stuff. They can't
stuff.
get rid of the Department of Education, of Commerce, all the things they talk about when they run for office. They don't or can't do anything about when they get into office.
And they're in majority.
Yeah, I know. How is that?
That'd definitely be nice if they could do something about that. It's totally biased.
Yeah.
NPR.
Oh, yeah.
Horrible.
And so, they could get rid of the Import-Export Bank, too, and there's a lot of other things
Lots
that
of
they
other
could get
things,
rid of.
Yeah.
But, my point was that it's so trivial. The National Endowment for the Arts.
I know, it is trivial. It's just symbolic.
Yeah.
It's politically
and they couldn't
symbolic.
even do that.
No. Or Planned Parenthood. They cannot take, there's nothing that they can seem to do once they're elected. But the Democrats are the same way.
Oh, I mean, but we hold Republicans to a higher standard.
Yeah, we do, because we want to see less government.
Right.
But the radical progressives that want to see a lot more government, they can't get it done either.
And they will distort the resolution of how to deal with the problem. For example, they'll say, well, you're anti-abortion. Well, no, I just don't want to pay for them.
Yeah.
Pay for your own abortion.
Right, exactly. So. The Supreme Court's going to hear another abortion case, but, abortion to me is a moral issue. I don't know. I wasn't even planning to get into this, but, a woman, suppose you're a woman and you give birth and your baby is right there, but you're not in a hospital, you're in your home or something, and the baby needs an immediate blood transfusion. By law, you cannot force the woman to even give a blood transfusion. Now, of course, 99.9% of mothers will.
Yeah.
But by law, you can't force it.
Right.
And so I don't see how you can force a woman to go to term with a pregnancy, which is eating, off of her, feeding off of her inside. So it's a moral issue. And,
it is, and it's a responsibility of that person, and only that person.
Right.
And her doctor.
Right. It shouldn't. If only...
Oh, look at the phones light up.
Yeah.
Inconceivable!
I mean, even Bill Clinton had it right. It should be legal but rare, but, that's a cultural issue. I mean, anyway.
We got off track here.
Yeah. We've got another cultural issue here, and that's it's now the second week of the strife in Israel. And I just wanted to talk a little bit because I was brought up in a religious environment, and
we won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I learned about the Bible and the history of the Jews when I was young, and since then there's been an awful lot of archaeology that's happened, and an awful lot of study. The Levant, which is the Middle East and Egypt. They've been taken apart by archaeologists for decades, hundreds of years actually. And so we actually have more of a clear idea of what the history was back then. And it isn't anything like what the Bible says, and it's nothing like what the Jews say, because the
Shocking, I tell you.
Yeah, the Zionists want what's called Eretz Israel, which would include, I think we've talked about this, it would go from the banks of the Nile to the Euphrates River, and that would include not only Palestine, but also Egypt, Saudi Arabia, parts of Egypt, parts of Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Turkey, all of Cyprus, all of Lebanon, and pretty much all of Syria. So that's what they really want, when you get down to it, Israel to be. So, but when you look at the history of the ancient Israelites from where they claim this right, it paints a totally different story. First of all, there's no record of a vast Israelite army under Joshua conquering the Levant in the late Bronze Age, because we're talking about Abraham was born in 2000 BC, according to the legend, and then King David, founded Israel in 1000 BC. So there is no record in the meantime of the Israelites conquering the Levant. I mean, Jericho was a real ancient city, one of the oldest on record, but there's no evidence that the walls ever came tumbling down, or any of the other conquests that they talk about in the Bible. So basically, the Israelites, whoever they were, just basically migrated into the area. So in 1928, the ancient city of Ugarit was discovered underneath a modern city in northern Syria. And that gave us a very good picture of the Canaanite people who lived in what is now Lebanon and Syria on the Mediterranean coast. These northern area Canaanites were later called Phoenicians by the Greeks. And they were great seafarers, and they invented the alphabet. To be truthful, they were one of the first civilizations that got away from hieroglyphics and just stick figures.
Quite enlightened.
Yeah. And then to the south, where Gaza is under siege today, but also including Tel Aviv, there was Philistia, the home of the Philistines. And we know a lot about the Philistines. They were a sea people. They were raiders and settlers from the islands around Greece. And they're depicted in murals in Egypt by the pharaohs that the pharaohs had built to memorialize their victories over them. So the pharaohs defeated the Philistines in a sea battle. And then Ramses III actually settled the defeated Philistines in the southern seacoast of Canaan, near where Gaza is now. And the thing is, the Philistines were uncircumcised, and they ate a lot of pigs.
You're going to bring that
It's all part of the plan.
So the Israelites basically lived only in the hilly center of the Levant, west of the Jordan River. And Jerusalem was the largest city of the southern part, which they called Judea after the main tribe there, the tribe of Judah, while Samaria was the capital of the northern part, where the eventual 10 lost tribes lived.
They were Sumerians.
They were, Sumerians?
Yeah, they were described as Sumerians.
Well, Abraham was originally from Samaria, southern Mesopotamia, but he traveled around, and he apparently never got to Israel. But Moses never did, and neither did Joshua. I mean, that's all just a legend.
I've never gotten there either.
So the ancient Israelites actually hated and feared the Mediterranean Ocean, the Mediterranean Sea, and they had no great seaports. They had tribal memories of Egypt and the mountains of West Saudi Arabia, which at the time were volcanic mountains. Yahweh likely began as a volcano god, and you can see that from the Bible, the pillar of fire by night and pillar of cloud by day, and all kinds of volcanic imagery, the burning bush and going up Mount Sinai to get the 10 Commandments. It all relates to the volcano, the power of volcanoes. So anyway,
just like here in the Northwest.
Yeah.
Clouds by day, fire by night.
Right. So the reign of King David, King Solomon, and their successors started around 1000 BC. Now, the Bronze Age had collapsed 200 years earlier, 1200 BC. The major powers of the world at that time was Egypt and the Hittites in what is now Turkey and the rulers of Iraq. And their kingdoms basically collapsed. Apparently, for 200 years, there was famine, and there was disease, and there was earthquakes. It was just a real mess. It was
ignorance? Was there ignorance too?
Yeah, there was a lot of ignorance.
Because all three of those seem to go together.
Yeah. It was very much like the Roman Dark Ages after the fall of Rome. So then after 200 years, the Iron Age began. And it was the Philistines that actually brought iron weapons and tools. The technology was first developed in Bulgaria and taken to the Levant by the Philistines and the other sea peoples. The Bible even mentions that the children of Israel had to buy their weapons and armor from the Philistines. So King David may have killed Goliath. And you know, a slingshot, a young man that could use a slingshot, that was no joke.
No, that's right. It was a weapon.
Yeah, ancient armies even had slingers along with archers that they recruited to go with them. So David killed Goliath, but the Philistines always seemed to win the war. They killed King Saul and his son Jonathan, and the bottom line is that archaeologists believe there were only about 50,000 Israelites in all of the area around the time of King David. They haven't been able to find any forts, any major forts built by David. And he apparently had a palace in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem was a small city of maybe 10,000 people. So the evidence really points to King David being more of a warlord, desperately fighting to keep the Philistines out of his hilly domain, than a great king. And no contemporary state seems to have taken notice of him. We only have a business record from over a century later from that city Ugarit that mentions that a client was of the house of David. And that's about the only reference we have to King David to confirm anything about him. So we'll be back, and we're going to figure out exactly what happened to the Israelites and to Israel.
Well, what did happen to the Israelites?
Well, it's a short story, but I hope we can get it in 15 minutes. But it's nothing like what the Jews claim. And, you know, if you listen to interviews of the Jews in Israel, and they all claim something entirely different.
You're not going to say it's propaganda, right?
I think it's propaganda, yeah.
Joe Biden is addressing Coast Guard cadets, and he is citing Mao Zedong.
Is he?
Hi, I'm Kevin Campbell, owner of Dynamic Diesel. Thanks to our customers and vendors over 13 years, we're once again growing and expanding.
Getting to know you.
Let me tell you about America Matters with Eddie Floyd. It comes on every Monday at noon. Don't want you to miss it. That's America Matters with Eddie Floyd.
Unable to listen to the whole show? A recording of today's program will be available later today. Visit americamatters.us and click on the podcast link. Now, back to the show.
All right, welcome back. And this is Brendan Trainor and my co-host Leland Faegre, and we were going over some of the evidence for what is claimed in the Bible and in the Jewish tradition for their claim to have the Holy Land given to them by God. So, that great real estate manager in the sky.
Yeah. Well, he knows these things.
Yeah. So we dispatched of David. Now, there's no evidence of the splendor of Solomon, his palaces and his concubines. He's supposedly had hundreds of concubines and wives.
Many hundreds.
Yeah, many hundreds. And the Bible, there's no, if the Queen of Sheba was so impressed by him that she journeyed to meet him and maybe had a baby with him, none of the other countries around were impressed enough to mention his name in any of their histories. So after his, the Bible even says that Solomon overtaxed the people, taxed them to death to build the first temple. And after his death, they revolted, and the kingdom of Israel, such as it was, broke up. Judah was the south and Israel the north. Now, the northern kingdom had more people, which makes sense because they had more tribes, the 10 tribes. And in the 9th century, the 100 years after David, they had some kings that other countries took notice of. King Omri was the first one that is actually written about in other countries' text. And his son Ahab, who famously married Queen Jezebel of the Canaanites, were known to the Assyrians, and we've recovered their names in our archaeological digs. But as the legacy great kingdoms around Israel slowly recovered from the Bronze Age collapse, they took more of an interest in the Levant. Pretty soon, both the countries, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern of Judea, were paying tribute to Assyria. So they were vassal states at this point. They weren't really independent states in control of the land. And so one of the kings of Israel eventually got cute and thought Egypt would back him if he stopped paying the Assyrians. But the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III, and
he was very good.
Yeah, he was a real boastful guy too. He said, "I have raped Samaria," and he attacked the northern kingdom and called Egypt's bluff, and they backed down, and he conquered Samaria and famously took what he claimed was 27,000 Jews back to Assyria, where they disappeared and became the 10 lost tribes. But obviously this means there were some ordinary Israelites living on the land who pretty much stayed there. They may have mostly assimilated into the Canaanite religion, which, frankly, they were always kind of fond of anyway. So the Canaanites were later called Phoenicians by the Greeks, and there seem to have been Jews who got over their fear of the sea who eventually mingled with them and sailed with them.
Did they settle in Phoenix? What is modern-day Phoenix?
No, Phoenicia.
Oh, was that Phoenicia?
It means purple. They discovered this sea anemone that washed up on the beaches, made this beautiful purple dye.
Yeah, but some of the sunsets there in Phoenix are really, really nice.
But so the Greeks called Phoenicians, which means purple, because in those days there wasn't much luxury anywhere, and everybody fell in love with these purple garments and stuff, and so they became, and also
people still love that color. I'm not one of them. I shy away from it, but I'm not sure why that is.
Yeah, that's where they got their name, though. But anyway, Judea, in the meantime, kept paying tribute to the Assyrians, and they survived a century more until they were conquered by the Babylonians. King Nebuchadnezzar.
I'm sorry?
King Nebuchadnezzar.
Sean, well, you got some Kleenex in there.
He was the Babylonian king because the Babylonians had rebelled and seized control of Mesopotamia from the Assyrians. The Babylonians not only conquered the Judeans, but they also destroyed the Philistines and sacked all their cities. So that was the end of the Philistines as a nation or peoples, and they probably just simply assimilated into the Canaanites. The Babylonians also took away the Israeli elites to exile in Babylon, but unlike the 10 lost tribes, we know what happened to them. Later, the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and King Cyrus the Great allowed the Jews to return to build the Second Temple. This was probably because in captivity the Jews adopted the monotheism of the Persians, whose Zoroastrian religion features worship of the one god Ahura Mazda.
Yeah, but that was better than polytheism.
Well, in order to ingratiate themselves with the Persians,
I see.
basically.
Okay.
Convinced by the priestly Jews that the Israelites would promote their version of his religion, that is, that Yahweh was actually their version of Ahura Mazda, Cyrus even subsidized the new temple, which is known today as the Second Temple. This created Judaism as a very different religion from the religion of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It was the beginning of modern Talmudic rabbinic Phariseeism, which is the official word for modern Judaism.
Mm-hmm. Situational ethics.
Yes. However, keep in mind this meant the Levant was controlled by Persia. The kingdom of the ancient Israelites of the patriarchs, David and Solomon, also the Philistines, and the Canaanites were no more. They were all now a province of Persia. The Phoenicians relocated to northern Africa and became known as the Carthaginians, who later fought Rome for 300 years. And Persia itself was later conquered by Alexander the Great, and the Hellenistic Greeks ruled the Levant until 167 BC, when, taking advantage of the weakness of the Hellenes due to the rising power of Rome, the Maccabees revolted and took control of Jerusalem and ruled the region for a century, until the Romans arrived in 68 BC. The Roman rule resulted in the coming of Jesus Christ, or his legend, the Great Jewish Revolt, and the Roman destruction of Jerusalem and the Second Temple in 70 AD, followed by brutal repression of more Jewish rebellions. After the last rebellion was put down in 134 AD, or CE they call it now.
Now we're getting close.
The Romans insulted the Jews by naming the area after the Philistines, calling it Palestinia. Palestine was the name commonly referred to for the area for 1,800 years. The British ruled in the 20th century under the League of Nations Palestinian Mandate up until the UN created Israel. The Jewish state began in 1948. So the ideas that the Jews were there before the Palestinians is laughable, and that's what they seem to believe. The Jews never conquered the Philistines or the Canaanites. They only controlled, like I said, the hilly areas west of the Jordan. In addition to the Philistines and Canaanites, the Jews were surrounded by other Semitic tribes in the Transjordan and south of the Dead Sea. And although they were cousins to them, they were kept separate by the Israelites' eternal quest to control the gene flow into their tribe.
Hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah. The Israelite elite strove to keep themselves a people that dwells alone even back then. Most of the Old Testament is about the elite priestly class, and only 1 or 2% of the people were literate, trying to preserve the purity of the Israelite gene pool. Although the common people, the people of the land as they were dismissively called, kind of like the Israelite version of the deplorables, didn't always go along with this elite agenda.
That's what we have in common with them.
Yes. Neither did all the elites. For example, David and Bathsheba, Samson and Delilah, Ahab and Jezebel. So not even the elites could keep away from the pagan heathen women and their pagan heathen
hard
gods.
To blame them.
Yeah. Yeah, better than a JAP, right? So the Palestinians are just as much the descendants of the Canaanites and even the Philistines as the Jews are of the ancient Hebrews, maybe more so, because there's a lot of questions about the DNA of the modern Jews compared to the DNA of the Israelites. But at any rate, the Jews have no historical claim to sole possession of the land except in their holy books, which should not be the basis of international law. Now, someday maybe we'll talk about the Jewish religion and how different that is from what we're told in Sunday school or in the Bible, but that's basically putting to rest the idea, through modern archaeology and the evidence that we have about the claims of the Zionists that God gave them the right to live in Israel.
Well, what you are summarizing in this segment of Talking Truth to Power is exactly what Thomas Paine was pointing out in The Age of Reason, is that revealed religion can't be believed.
Right, exactly.
That's basically, in summation, what he was saying.
Right, and it's basically true. And, like I said, we have talked about some of the religious aspects of Judaism that people would be shocked to learn about. And but the secular Jews, the Zionists, they talk about the Bible, but they're not really religious. They have. That's why I think the Irish are probably right.
Well, and I don't think that's any different from any Christian either, for the most part.
Oh yeah.
They'll cite what it was imbued in their upbringing. Well, they don't really understand.
Right. The Bible, you can pull quotes out of the Bible to justify two sides of almost every question.
Situational ethics?
Yeah. But even more so in the Talmud, because the Jewish religion is a this worldly religion. It really has no next world. It's all about the survival and prosperity of the Jewish tribe.
Right. Going into our last commercial break, we were talking about Biden's discussion of Mao Zedong at the address of the Coast Guard this afternoon. He's now complaining that his audience, some of these cadets, are dull. They weren't enthusiastic about his tour.
Oh, wow.
Who would